The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of National Defence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I will be sharing my time today with my honourable friend, the Member of Parliament for Don Valley West, who is particularly well-suited and I think very keen to speak to this budget. But I'd like to begin by complimenting our outstanding Minister of Finance, my neighbour, the Member of Parliament for Whitby-Oshawa, on this latest budget. He and his team have once again set an extremely high standard. By continuing to look a little ahead, he's following the example of Sir John A.'s great finance ministers, Alexander Galt and Sir John Rose, Hincks, Tilley and Sir George Foster, who looked to the whole world for Canada's economic opportunity. And by putting responsible resource development, manufacturing and innovation front and centre in successive budgets, they have articulated a truly national policy for the 21st century. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to speak briefly today about four issues: debt, jobs, markets, and the future. Mais soyons clairs au début. Les dernières 7 années ont appartenu au Canada, tel que le ministre l'a dit. Que ce soit lors de la performance de nos troupes en Afghanistan, au Panjwai en 2006, ou lors du sommet du G20 à Toronto en 2010, lorsqu'on a mis de l'avant un ordre du jour concernant la consolidation fiscale pour le monde entier. Le monde a commencé à regarder le Canada d'un autre œil. Il a eu recours pendant une période de crise au Canada pour le leadership en matière économique et le Premier ministre et le ministre des Finances n'ont jamais manqué l'occasion de fournir ce leadership. The Muskoka Initiative has delivered an ambitious global partnership for maternal, newborn and child health, even as we've launched the most ambitious trade liberalization agenda in our country's history, all the while remaining the best in the G7 for job creation, growth and government-funded research. But, Mr. Speaker, the key to all these achievements, above all else, is indeed fiscal responsibility. Compare our deficit projection for this year, $18.7 billion, with those of the U.S. $901 billion is the current projection, with many variables ahead, as we know in Congress and elsewhere. Or the UK, £108 billion for this year. As the lesson of Cyprus has shown in the past week, the world is still on a sovereign debt precipice, with many of our allies and partners already exceeding the 90% threshold for debt to GDP, beyond which growth has historically slowed on average by 1.2% per year, even in conditions of low interest rates, as Reinhardt and Rogoff have recently shown in a now famous paper. Tous les pays avec un revenu moyen per capita au-dessus de celui du Canada ont aussi un niveau de dette inférieur à celui du Canada, que ce soit la Suède, le Danemark, la Suisse, l'Australie ou quelques autres pays assez petits. This budget resists the temptation to throw caution to the winds, to sacrifice fiscal consolidation on the altar of short-term advantage, to saddle our young people with an unnecessary burden. But make no mistake, Mr. Speaker, that is exactly what both opposition parties would do with their uncosted proposals, with their inconsistent statements, with their bureaucratic reflexes, and their politics of instant gratification. The government will not travel this path. We will not miss this opportunity to continue Canada's economic leadership in mining, where we continue to be the world leader in new financing of exploration and development, dans les secteurs de l'aérospatial et de la défense, où notre capacité de produire les meilleurs produits et de développer les capacités de l'avenir ont trouvé un nouvel appui dans ce budget. In advanced manufacturing, where we are taking action to promote innovation, et dans le domaine des finances, où le Toronto ainsi que les autres centres très dynamiques du secteur financier au Canada, Calgary, Montréal, Vancouver, se rangent maintenant parmi les premiers 10 centres financiers mondiaux. And also in agriculture, Mr. Speaker, where our exports of meat, grain, fish and other food products continue to grow, all of these sectors, Mr. Speaker, creating high-paying jobs from coast to coast to coast in urban areas and rural. Mr. Speaker, it's one thing to want to have a low-tax, high-skilled jurisdiction. It's quite another to deliver on such a commitment. This Prime Minister, this Minister have done both. And international investors have been watching, Mr. Speaker. We have the best business climate, according to Forbes magazine. We have the soundest banks, according to the Davos Forum. Over the past 7 years, portfolio investment in Canada has grown 67%, Mr. Speaker, while many other advanced economies have lost the confidence of investors or stumbled. Direct investment by Canadians in the world has grown from $806 to $980 billion, while direct investment in Canada has advanced from $802 to $947 billion. These are some of the keys, Mr. Speaker, to our recovery. These are the facts that underpin the creation of 950,000 net new jobs, most of them in the private sector, most of them high quality, since the low point of the last recession. But, Mr. Speaker, we must do more to ensure all Canadians have access to economic opportunity. That's why this budget also includes new measures to tackle homelessness, to build new affordable housing, to empower those with disabilities, and to help young Aboriginal Canadians find or start find a trade or start a new business. But let's be clear about our record to date. Canada's growth over the past 7 years has been balanced and inclusive. Let's recall what TD Economics told us in December 2012, and I quote, "Income inequality is both persistently lower and rising more slowly in Canada than in the United States. In fact, inequality in Canada has been flat since 1998 as measured by the Gini coefficient." Another record of achievement, Mr. Speaker. And let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the opportunity Canada has. According to Statistics Canada, our GDP in 2012 comes out at $1.833 trillion. Again, according to Statistics Canada, as of now, the estimated population just over 35 million. That's $52,288 of GDP per Canadian, Mr. Speaker. Well ahead of larger countries in the G7, well ahead of most of our peers. Et contrairement à l'opposition, nous ne sommes pas, nous ne vivons pas, nous ne tolérons pas les illusions concernant le rôle que le commerce international a joué en créant notre succès. Let's be clear what international economic experts are saying. Robert Z. Lawrence, Senior Fellow of the Peterson Institute, quote, "Trade has improved living standards. With the exception of oil, emerging economies have been mainly complementary rather than competitive." This is not what we hear from the NDP, who want to shut down all of our trade agreements in North America and beyond. They are not telling Canadians, coming clean with Canadians, about what this would do to our living standards, to our prosperity, to our future. And instead, this government is pursuing an ambitious trade agenda, building a powerful economic relationship with China. On poursuit le libre-échange avec l'Inde. On négocie un accord de libre-échange avec l'Europe. Un accord historique pour le Canada. We're multiplying free trade agreements with Latin America, and we're driving with the US, Japan, and others towards a trans-Pacific partnership. CETA amalgamation with foreign affairs, Mr. Speaker, I think all of us on this side of the House welcome it. Will only help us to be more strategic about our position in the world, to have an effective policy for partnering with low-income countries while trading and investing with developing middle-income and high-income countries coherently, powerfully. And is it not, Mr. Speaker, a huge advantage for Canada, not only to have a development commitment to the 54 countries of Africa, but to have mining companies which have invested not $5 billion of 2005, but $32 billion plus in Africa today? Does that not do more to raise living standards and to also secure Canadian leadership? What does this mean for a riding like Ajax-Pickering? It means young people will be considering apprenticeships in the many sectors where nearly 250,000 jobs are still going unfilled. It means small businesses will be seeking Canada's jobs grants to plan for new hiring, even while welcoming the extension of the tax credit for new hires. Ça veut dire que l'investissement en équipement à usage industriel va continuer. Et on a vu déjà une augmentation de 11% en 2010, presque 25% en 2011. It means that those who attended our pre-budget roundtable on youth, women, and unemployment last fall with Parliamentary Secretary Kelly Leitch now know that they have been heard. Excuse me, with the Parliamentary Secretary for Human Resource Development. It means commuters, families, and public transit. Municipal authorities at Ajax and Pickering can now have confidence that the largest long-term commitment to infrastructure in Canada's history, $70 billion over 10 years, will benefit them. It means those who believe in a strong defense industry for Canada will be looking to opportunities in shipbuilding, aerospace, defense procurement to harness new ideas and support the next technological breakthrough in blast-resistant materials or low-emission propulsion. Mr. Speaker, during the ministry of Sir John A. Macdonald, Canada represented only 1.3% of global GDP. Today, we represent something like 2.6% after a crisis that has seen the share of other advanced economies slide, and as emerging economies have seen unparalleled growth. Global GDP has risen from 41 trillion in 2000 to over 70 trillion today. But Canada's place remains prominent. Canada's prospects remain bright. Canada's leadership remains strong, thanks to this budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question et commentaire, l'honorable député Honoré Mercier.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Vous savez, avant d'être ici au Parlement, j'étais prof dans une école. Dans l'éducation, je tiens parce que c'est le meilleur investissement qu'ils ont fait dans notre pays, c'est dans l'éducation. C'est à partir de ça qu'ils ont fait les grands changements, dans tous les sens. Dans ce budget, moi, qu'est-ce qui m'inquiète? Qu'on parle de l'éducation, oui, toujours lié à l'emploi. Mais l'éducation, ça commence tout petit. Donc, quand les enfants ont de la difficulté, plusieurs ici parmi nous, on a des enfants. Nous avons des fois des enfants qui ont de la difficulté à l'école, certains problèmes. Donc, de quelle façon les budgets s'occupent des familles qui se trouvent avec un enfant qui ont une difficulté à l'école? Donc, ces difficultés-là d'apprentissage, etc., vont amener des problèmes dans le futur quand on va être un jeune adolescent, et peut-être ça va donner un décrochage. On fait quoi dans ce sens-là? Je vois rien. Autre chose qui m'inquiète, l'éducation. Quand on parle ici, consacrer 10 millions de dollars sur les 12 ans et une stratégie de marketing pour les étudiants étrangers. Coudon. L'éducation, ce n'est pas du marketing, c'est une valeur profonde, importante. Donc, je pose la question à mon cher collègue. Pourquoi on a laissé l'éducation de côté, l'éducation de nos enfants, pour aider les familles? Merci.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Monsieur le Président, on ne l'a pas laissé de côté, mais on respecte le fait que ce soit une juridiction provinciale, une compétence provinciale. Malgré cela, nous avons assuré des transferts de 10 milliards de dollars par année pour l'éducation postsecondaire vers les provinces, un niveau beaucoup supérieur à n'importe lequel niveau dans le passé, et surtout le niveau qu'on connaissait sous les libéraux. On a consacré 2,7 milliards par année en transferts liés au marché du travail pour aider les personnes à occuper un emploi. Il y a plusieurs initiatives à cet égard dans le budget nouveau. On a une stratégie emploi jeunesse, on a un fonds d'intégration pour les personnes handicapées, on a une stratégie de formation pour les compétences et l'emploi destiné aux Autochtones. Tous ces programmes avec une dimension éducative et tout en respectant les compétences provinciales, Monsieur le Président, qui restent au fondement de notre pays, de notre Constitution.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mon collègue a parlé de tous les avantages du budget 2013. Il a promu beaucoup de choses. J'aimerais bien demander s'il peut expliquer pourquoi, si le budget est si bon, pourquoi le gouvernement doit dépenser des centaines de millions de dollars pour la publicité, pour dire à tout le monde encore plusieurs fois pourquoi le gouvernement fait des bonnes choses. En fait, in fact, not even explaining any details of why the government is spending what it's spending, but simply just to put some good feelings in Canadians. Why does the government think, if it thinks that the budget is so great, why does it think it's so great to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on these kinds of feel-good advertisements?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Speaker. I know the member was not here at the time, neither was I, but he really should know that the spending levels were much higher under the Liberal government. The Honourable Secretary of the Treasury, President of the Treasury Board has mentioned that on several occasions. He should also know that no one will take Liberals seriously on this question until they tell us what happened with $40 million from the sponsorship scandal.
Exactly.
The biggest government advertising scandal in Canadian history.
Where to go? Questions and comments. A short question. The honourable member for Burlington.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal member from Kingston in this previous question to the previous speaker said that we on this side only believe that jobs can be created by lowering taxes. So my question to the Parliamentary Secretary is, what do higher taxes do to job creation in this country?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It would be such a pleasure to be in this place if there were more questions like that, Mr. Speaker. And I encourage all honourable members to ask questions that are relevant to economic reality in the world today. The short answer, Mr. Speaker, is that higher taxes would kill jobs. Can I say that again, Mr. Speaker, just so that everyone understands? Higher taxes would kill jobs. The NDP hasn't been following what's happened in Sweden. They think it's a socialist workers' paradise with very high taxes. It is doing well because it has reduced taxes more aggressively than any country in Europe. It is doing well because it has lower debt levels, thanks to a government that is very similar to ours in its policies, than almost anyone in Europe.
Hear, hear.
Low taxes create jobs, high taxes kill jobs.
Hear, hear.